Comrade Dr. Benkumo, General Mensa, and Comrade Lee Nai African Abbey, also known as Nai. Give us some background, please.
Of the National Democratic Congress, the leader of the June 4th uprising, and the chairman of the AFRC, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. Please give it up to him.
Comrade ministers, comrade generals, fellow comrades, cadets of the revolution, friends and sympathizers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for once again making time to converge here to remember the souls of the fallen heroes and rededicate June 4th to the spirit of equity, fairness, power to the people, probity, accountability, truth, and integrity. Comrades, developments over the past year on both the political and social front have once again exposed the extent of political and social disorder and dishonesty that is eating our country up like a malignant tumor. I've spoken a few times about these serious observations and received the usual abuse and vituperations from cowards who, in their delusion, assume their ill-acquired wealth make them untouchable, regardless of the power and unbreakable force and conviction of the ordinary, hard-working, and noble people of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, not too long ago, a week and a half or so, a newspaper called The Public Agenda carried a news item by the Deputy Chief of Staff, Mr. Johnny Osei Kofi. This gentleman was cautioning us that Ghana risks importing water by 2021. The article claims that Ghana is at risk of importing water in the near future. This news item may sound preposterous to most people, but that is the stark reality. There is a global water crisis created by the abuse of the environment. In our country, the situation has become dire because of the abuse of our water bodies through the dumping of non-degradable waste like plastics, metals, chemicals, and other poisonous material. It is further exacerbated by the senseless abuse of our rivers and lakes in the newfound craze for illegal mining. It is tragic to see rivers such as Ankobra, Pra, Ofin, and parts of the Volta, which used to provide clean water, potable water, to huge communities, now turn into a flow of mud and grime. As far back as the early 80s, when I was in office, I used to travel around the country a lot. An observation I made, especially in parts of the three northern regions was that a little too frequently, the roads would be leading over bridges, and yet these bridges had no river flowing under them. In effect, the environment had become so degraded that these water bodies had dried up. Ladies and gentlemen, just as how and what we are reflects our sense of responsibility, so also does the environment reflect our sense of discipline and sense of responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, in a country like Zimbabwe, you dare not cut a tree, even in your own backyard, without governmental permission. We have, over the years, tried to encourage the growing of trees and the protection of our forest. In those days, we would not build roads without employing the 31st December Women's Movement to grow trees along the roads. I have watched the brutal hacking down of trees over the years, especially since I left office. Trees that were planted along the Temamoto Way to Akosombo Road were brutally hacked down a few months ago. Not even the traders who have decided to colonize the shoulders of our urban roads could protect these shade-providing trees. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing reflects our irresponsibility and indiscipline more than the neglect of our environment. Nothing reflects the poor standard and authority of a government as the environment. Nothing reflects the lawlessness in a country as the neglect of its environment. The protection of the environment is the quickest way for a government or local authority to demonstrate its sense of discipline. By contrast, the corruption of the environment is the quickest way to degrade our human self-worth. And a government or local authority that would butcher trees or watch the degradation of its environment cannot expect people to behave responsibly in other facets of their life, or even respect their own government. Ladies and gentlemen, upon entering Akuse or Akosombo Township, it can be observed that the Volta River Authority has similarly grown trees over the years along their roads. These trees have been preserved in spite of the electrical lines. Whenever necessary, the branches are pruned responsibly rather than hacking down these trees. This kind of action evokes in us responsible behavior and respect for the corporate authority in that vicinity. The trees on the Temamoto Way to Akosombo that I mentioned earlier could also have had their branches pruned to save the electrical lines and provide the shade they were intended to. To butcher them in the manner it was done contributes swiftly to the perpetuation of corruption. We are fortunate when we can protect a tree that has been provided by nature. Ladies and gentlemen, but to make the extra effort of applying human labor to plant trees and subsequently hack them down for firewood is a reflection of the thoughtlessness of both the contractor, the political authority, and the little-mindedness of those who could not protect the shady trees. Towards the end of 2008, one of the most glaringly irresponsible actions was the hasty attempt to plant electric poles in the center of the motorway. Not only did the material these poles were made of look extremely cheap and inferior, but also the situation very much called for the installation of solar lamps. The green plants at the center of the motorway could have been nurtured or left alone to provide a curtain, a wall effect in the center of the motorway and to shield the irresponsible high lights from one lane into the other. But no, those plants had to be chopped down to give us the maximum effect of the Akosombo light. Ladies and gentlemen, I had hoped this irresponsibility would come to an end after 2008. But as soon as the new government became well seated, we were back to business as usual. We did not seem to learn any lesson. We did not seem to know any better. The water level in the dam was not improving, and yet switching to solar energy seemed very far from our minds. And the contractor was given the go-ahead to finish the job. Ladies and gentlemen, the low bush fires that occurred last year bent down quite a number of those poles. It appears those poles were made of some kind of fiberglass or bandages and glue. There is no doubt in my mind that some people have chopped good money for this kind of ineptitude. Ladies and gentlemen, I drive on the Accra-Sogakope Road a lot. One of the most cost-saving set of poles that made it possible to extend electricity to various parts of the country were the teak trees that were cultivated in Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's days. Some of these poles are as solid as ever on the Accra-Adan Road. But for whatever reason, have had to be replaced. Almost 80% of these new poles are all tilted. Someone was in a real hurry to make his money real quick. So quick, they couldn't even plant the poles upright to match the teak poles that they were replacing. Something is going very wrong in this country. It is not one or two or three poles that were tilted by the majority. Take a drive, go see for yourselves. Something is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Something is really wrong. Because the majority of the folk who are in charge of managing our communities are very much aware of the impact of trees on our ecosystem. It is common knowledge that trees allow for what the technical people will refer to as evapotranspiration, which leads to more rain. Our failure to inculcate a culture of tree planting and the continued ladies and gentlemen,
another lady who performed the yeoman's task in those days was called Fanny Manson.
She's now Mrs. Idrisu. She marshaled vehicles all over the country to make sure that food produce could be brought down into the urban areas. I dedicate today to noble people like them. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you and God bless you.